Section 23 of Crime, Its Causes and Remedies by Cesare Lombroso. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information on a volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Leon Harvey. Chapter 5. Religion. Subchapter 159. It is time to free ourselves from the atavistic tendency, which has survived unnoticed even in the most scientific observer, to regard religion as a universal panacea for crime. Let us recall how slowly we have been freed from the religious shell from which have come the first attempts not only at morals, but also at art and science, so that once no one could be painter, sculptor, poet, architect, or physician without first being priest, Spencer. But at length art and science, those noble plants that grew up modestly in the shadows of the temple, are completely free from its influence, and there remains to the priest one who dominated every department of knowledge, a monopoly not even of morals and charity, for many profess a charity and an ethics apart from religion, and from all sides there are rising ethical societies free from all rights. We cannot then find a religion, at least as it is understood in Latin countries, a remedy against crime. The true morality, we may say with certainty, is instinctive. The moral sense is like the feeling of pity. It does not already exist. Neither religious nor educative influence, nor any precept will be able to create it. Religion is a system of instruction by precepts, which have, like all our moral rules, an exterior sanction remote from reality and the daily life. And not only is it not able to fortify the character, but on the contrary, it can only enfeeble it, by minimizing the personality by asceticism even to the point of annihilation. It is from religion that springs the monstrous phenomenon of men externally religious and respected for ecclesiastical and divine authority, and at the same time immoral in their social relations. But how is it, someone will ask, that religion shows itself at times as a useful moral force against crime? We reply that religion can have a beneficent influence only when, being in an essence state, it can transform itself into a violent passion. Delia furnishes us with a magnificent example of such a transformation. Delia lost her mother at an early age, and was carefully brought up in a convent. Seduced in the first place by a young lawyer, and then ravished by a priest while under the influence of a narcotic, she abandoned herself to a life of prostitution and drunkenness. She was 3 times sent to correctional institutions, and finally released because she refused all food while imprisoned. She joined a band of thieves, of which she soon became the head because of her energy and muscular agility. She fought with the police and her own companions, so that she was arrested several times. She aided thieves in their exploits, but she would not permit the weak to be struck in her presence, and would defend them at the risk of her own life. She was devoted to the sick, took care of them, and defended them against those who wanted to rob them. The police called her the Wanderer, but her companions called her the Bluebird, doubtless from the colour she preferred. A missionary, Mrs. Woodmore, on the 25th of May 1891, went into the dives of Mulberry Bend, where she gathered these thieves together and tried to hold a religious service. But being excited by the arrest of 2 men by their band, they would not even let her sing. They would certainly have revenged themselves upon the missionaries if these had not been protected by Delia, who afterward accompanied them into the opium dens on Mott Street, where the worst criminals in New York assemble. Upon leaving her, Mrs. Whatmore gave her a rose, which she made a half-mystical omen, begging her to be converted and to come to her with the flower. But the Bluebird answered that, as for money, she found it quite natural to take it from anyone who had it. As for the rest, she added, I have committed already all the sins that it is possible for me to commit, and I should not be able to live in any other way. She was then 23 years old. She promised, however, to come to one of the mission halls, and kept her word. In the evening she went to return her enchanted rose, and confessed that she had passed a very troubled day, trying to drown her doubts in drink. But the more she drank, the more she became the mistress of herself. If the evening, perceiving that the flower was withering, she became thoughtful, and recalled the days when she too was pure like the rose. She saw the years falling away one by one like the petals of the flower, and immediately her resolution was taken, and she told her companions that she was quitting them. The same evening, with tears in her eyes, she presented herself at the mission, where Mrs. Wetmore embraced her tenderly and asked her to pray with her. From that day she gave up drink, opium, and tobacco, and asked to be allowed to see one of her old boon companions in prison in order to convert him. She was sent to the hospital very ill with consumption and syphilis. When, on coming out, she was invited to drink, she resisted the inclination. When she was cured, she set herself to work to convert her old companions of Mulberry Bend. She also addressed 1,500 convicts at Auburn. "What have we gained," she said, "by serving the devil, prison, misery, contempt, and disease? When I was at my worst and delighted in making others afraid of me, I was myself often afraid, and would not go to bed without a bright light burning beside me. In the morning I used to ask myself whether I would not lie in prison that night. I remember that when a lady once said to me, 'Have you found Jesus?' I replied, 'No, is he lost?' For I hated the Protestants. My religion was purely one of form. If you ask me how much time it took for me to give up my life of sin forever, I will answer you. About 3 minutes, the time it took to ask God to do it. In 11 months, she converted more than 100. She died of consumption within the year, but the stir that she made was so great that after her death 80 of her companions became, or agreed to become, honest. I do not guarantee the conversion of the last, but that of Delia is certain. This is proved by the change in her face as shown by her photographs. It must be remembered that she was led to a life of prostitution and crime, not by precocious criminality, but by a rape committed while she was drugged. Further, even her criminal career, she was always a protectress of the weak. It is plain, then, that she was rather a criminaloid than a born criminal. However that may be, the promptitude of her conversion, it was, she said, an affair of 3 minutes, under the influence of a suggestive impression, and further, the ardour that she brought to it, both go to prove that in this case the religious passion in the nascent state stifles all the other passions. Similar cases may be adduced, like that related to me by the Baptists, of a drunken thief who was converted at a stroke by the sermons and example of the missionaries, and persevered in the right way. But these are absolutely individual and cannot be cited in favour of religion. They furnish no proof that religion as organized with us, among whom these fruitful fanaticisms do not flourish, has the efficiency in the cure of criminality. It is to be noted, moreover, that these miracles occur especially among the Anglo-Saxons and Swiss. We are forced to conclude that what is commonly attributed to the influence of religion is really due to race and to advanced civilization, which carries these people towards great ideas and noble fanaticisms, while, with the development of cultures, the religious sentiment each day grows weaker. It is thus that we find proof of a noble zeal in the societies for ethical culture, and among the Good Templars, which are ethical and anti-alcoholic rather than religious. In the Calvinistic countries, writes Ferrero, religion enrolls thousands of fanatics, who, one of the most diverse names and theories, are feverishly active, not in honour of a right, but in order to save the souls of men. In Italy, as in France, no one succeeds in bringing about a great flood of moral protest against the most serious social evils, and enthusiastic and active spirits must seek elsewhere for a field in which to employ their energy. Take the Salvation Army, for example. This institution was founded by Booth, under the most eccentric exterior films, with a military hierarchy and bizarre uniforms, but with the holiest and soberest intentions. It is a sort of sect that has for its aim the prevention and combating of vice and crime, even with the strangest weapons. It contends against alcoholism with meetings, cheap temperance hotels, elevators, and people's kitchens, which last in 1895 distributed 3,396,078 meals. It fights vagrancy with dormitories, which give lodgings every night to more than 4,100 persons, where many persons are converted by evangelistic meetings. The Salvation Army puts within reach of the unfortunate everything they may be able to draw from evil ways. It enrolls them in employment agencies, which in the year 1895 alone found work for 19,372 persons, or receives them into its elevators, special establishments, where they are employed at paid work or taught a trade if they have none, and no situations can be found for them. Or they may be placed in the farm villages of the army, in which they may remain in relation for 4 years. For convicts, the Salvation Army has addresses in prison. It enrolls the more promising subjects as soldiers in the ranks, and admits another part of them into a special establishment, where it attempts to repair the defects of their moral and practical education, especially by teaching them a trade. From here they pass to the elevators, and then into the employ of private institutions, or to the farm villages, etc. The Army owns, besides, 84 bureaus for the unfortunate, the office of which is to direct and personal effort to conquer vice. In a year they visit about 58,723 poor families in private houses, 15,702 persons in public houses, and 7,500 in lodging houses, giving assistance to at least 3,887 sick persons. The Army also maintains special institutions for children who are sent as speedily as possible to the country. For women, the Army maintains 9 special dormitories and 13 rescue homes, which almost literally snatch women from public houses as one of the doubtful resorts. They give employment to 1,556 women, and, after a certain time, find places for them in private houses, or send them to their farms. It is remarkable to see how quiet a reception these new soldiers of charity meet with. Their houses, elevators, and farms are open, and anyone who wishes can go in or come out, and one who is left and comes back again is always received as a prodigal son and enjoys complete liberty. The principle of the work of the Wesleyans is not radically different. When Marcus, one of their leaders, had revealed the horrors of the condition of the poor of London, they threw themselves headlong into the work of converting the vicious and alcoholic. Hughes, one of their greatest apostles, said in a sermon, "We must not be so wrapped up in saving the soul that we forget to save the body," and with the essence of the profoundest conviction he carried hundreds of persons with him, who professed themselves converted and confided themselves to his pastoral guidance. They chose the hours when men are most in danger, the social hours as they call them, between 9 and 11, invite them to evening gatherings, treat them well, and get them to sign the pledge. They visit the most infected places where their sisters discover and save the women who are in danger. One of them one day saw a young girl being led into a public house by a libertine. Accosting her, she said, "Remember that you are a woman," and kissed her on the forehead. The girl, much moved, replied, "I will never go into a public house again, but take us in every evening if you do not want us to fall into evil again." In the Protestant Association for the Practical Study of the Social Question, we find partisans of the idea of the participation of labour in the benefits of capital. Lord Shaftesbury, who transformed the condition of the miners in England, advocated also insurance against industrial accidents. The Order of Good Templars, founded in New York, 1862, and that of the Blue Cross, founded in Geneva in 1877, number respectively 500,000 and 10,000 members, who are required to abstain for a certain time from all alcoholic drinks, and succeed in doing it. Also explains why it is that in Protestant countries, especially in Switzerland and England, alcoholism is decreasing, while it is increasing in Catholic countries. Can we say that our Salesians and sisters have accomplished more? Far from it. To attain similar results, or even to strive after them, there is necessary a degree of ideality not to be found in the old races, who shut themselves up within their ritual observances and reach their highest development in a dictator, whether he be pope, general of an order, or saint. This is a fact which I have directly demonstrated by putting side by side the work of Don Bosco and that of Dr. Barnardo. In Italy we see crime effectively combated by rare individualities, but they are either dissenters or lazaretti, or at least have had for some time their centre of action outside the orbit of the official church, like Don Bosco and St. Francis of Assisi. In either case they constitute, for the moment at least, a new religion, palpitating with life, and in a little time would form a schism, if the prudent statesmanship of Rome did not take precautions to draw them once more within the circle of her influence. Hence it comes that saints like Don Bosco and Bartolo Longo do not arise without having obstacles elsewhere placed in their way by those very ecclesiastical authorities who ought to build altars to them. It is for the same reason that when they wish to raise themselves up to the level of the advanced ideas of our own time, they only half succeed. Instead of starting the children under their care in the more useful trades on a large scale by organizing immigration parties or clearing the land, as Dr. Barnardo did, they succeeded only in creating great monasteries and in turning up priests and classical scholars for whom society has no place. They are saints, in short, of a time remote from our own, though his work, however vast it may be, is still necessarily short to the needs of the present, and rarely reaches the roots of crime. However admirable they may be for genius or sanctity, they must conform to the will of the higher authority, and show that they have more at heart the triumph of the rights of Rome than that of virtue. If not, they are suppressed. Thus it is that Don Bosco had for his final aim the creation of Salesian priests, just as the object sought by Bartolo Longo was the worship of Our Lady of Pompeii. Now, even if, by giving to deserted children a trade and education which was certainly moral, they prevented the occurrence of some accidental crimes, they could never, in this way, save their true criminaloid and criminal born. We may conclude, then, by saying that ritual and liturgical formula are much more in evidence in institutions of this kind than the rules necessary for practical life. On the other hand, in the Latin charities, the support of the public is almost never associated with that of the founder. It never manifests itself personally, and is consequently less interested and less efficacious. Since the power of these great apostles lies completely in their own personality, they have all the merit and all the responsibility, and when they leave the scene, they leave an empty place that cannot be filled. In the French Awesome Asylums, Joly tells us, for a long time, only the religious interest of the children was thought of. They were put into a brotherhood without being given any trade. Rousseau also remarks that the church charities in France are all for young girls, so that neglected boys have no other refuge than the prisons and houses of correction. Moreover, the Catholic orphanages almost never receive illegitimate children, and unlike the Protestants, who try to throw as much light of publicity on their own organizations as possible, the Catholic institutions do all they can to escape it, and are never willing to report except to the bishop and to Rome. The pupils of the orphanages grow up without any knowledge of the world, and are consequently incapable of making a future for themselves. In conclusion, we may say that Anglo-Saxon charity differentiates itself from the Latin still more fundamentally through taking particular care to preserve the self-respect of its beneficiaries, by making use of their services, by making itself, in fact, cooperative and mutual, and it concerns itself especially with the very young, to whom Latin charity pays little attention, feeding them at most. Among the Anglo-Saxons we see religious groups like the Salvation Army and the Baptists proposing, as their great aim in life, redemption from crime, the prevention of alcoholism, and the care of infancy, and the influence of individual men like Booth and Barnardo, through their inspiration and genius, counts for much in the search for better methods. They are not indispensable, for there is always a legion of fellow workers, who by their numbers and enthusiasm ensure the support of the public. Here, then, is not religion in general that deserves the credit, but certain religions only, or better still the ideal tendency of certain progressive races. However, we must say of the operation of religion, as we have said of the charity, that it is always individual, limited, and less effective than the economic influence which alone is universally felt by the masses. End of section 23.